Welcome back to SuperTalk Outdoors. It's a magical time of the year in Mississippi as we take this old truck ride toward Thanksgiving. It's amazing again that so much time has passed. But Thanksgiving, the tradition of Thanksgiving, the time that families will be spending in the outdoors. What I would say to you is, as I always end every show, stay safe when you're in the outdoors. I talk about it a lot more these days because I'm sitting in this seat. I hear so many stories. And the thing that we talked about a couple of weeks ago when we had the safety show is that the accident usually happens to the seasoned hunter that drops his guard, whether forgetting to unload a gun or not wearing a safety strap when they're going up into a stand or any number of other things. It's usually the seasoned hunter that just got a little bit careless, a little bit taking it for granted. Take a second if you're in a club, whether it's a family situation or literally a club, and remind your members, some of the basics. Make sure those breaches are open when people are when they bring guns into the camp. I had my buddy Chris Guritz on last year, and he talked about an unfortunate firing of a gun that happened that went through a couple of walls and hit one of his friends in the leg, and he was okay ultimately after a trip to the hospital and some bleeding, et cetera. But it could have been so much worse, and too often we hear that it is worse. And so let's keep safety first as we barrel into some of the most important times of the outdoors life that we all lead, whether it be duck hunting or whitetail deer hunting or just enjoying the outdoors. So now let's shift gears and move over to Keith Mills. He's a fisheries biologist with the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. He's been there for more than 37 years, and he's got a lot of experience. We're going to find out what the latest is in his world. How you doing, Keith?
I'm fine.
So where are you sitting right now?
Sitting in the office here.
Where what location?
Ole Miss Field Station.
Yeah, well, good. Hey, let's give people a sense of what you do.
Okay. We cover about, I think it's 14 or 15 counties in northwest Mississippi, including all the 4 flood control reservoirs. Well, it's 3 in a puddle now because Arkabutla is down. And we have a couple of oxbows, private ponds, the public fishing lakes, the CFAP lakes, community fishing lakes that are in various counties up here. And so we get a lot of private pond calls too. So it's always something.
It is. So, it's you guys have, as I've covered from so many different angles, the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks have done a really good job in public lakes and in the private pond consulting that you guys do. I have a friend of mine over in Hancock County that has taken your advice, and man, there is just absolutely incredible bass coming out of his lake now. He's taking out the size he needs to take out, and it's a bunch of them. And he's doing the fertilizer and lime the way you're supposed to do it, and he has built just an absolute masterful lake, and all from the advice of the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. But you guys have had your hands full over the years. You got plenty to do on your to-do list. I bet that during the drought, we got some rain coming, not enough, but it's good to know that at least some relatively significant rain is coming. The drought, I bet there's been a lot of questions of you during this drought about, what people should do.
Well, actually, no.
Really?
Here in North Mississippi, we caught a lot of rain early, and the reservoirs filled up, to normal pool, normal summer pool, a little bit over in some cases, except for Arkabutla, which we won't go there. But we did have a threat of a dam breach on Arkabutla, and it had to be drawn down for repairs. And it's still down. It's down. They're keeping it about elevation 204, 205, which is normally its summer pool is 220, and its winter pool is 210. So it's below winter pool. I hear there's a lot of ducks on there right now because that's all grown up to grass and smartweed and stuff like that. But you don't want to try and walk in the bottom. And there's almost no boat access. But we really, have not been impacted by the drought on those reservoirs.
Yeah.
We have had more or less normal water levels, and they're coming down on schedule, actually just a hair over rule curve, and they should be at winter pool. The lower three should be at winter pool December 1st.
There's a lot of private lakes that wish they could make that claim.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, there's the private lakes, people are calling and said, me and complaining that their pond is low. And I'm like, has it rained? A lot of people don't connect the fact that these watersheds are ponds that fill up from rainfall. And you have to have, 10 to 15 acres of watershed per surface acre of water in order to maintain that water level. And if you don't get the rain, it goes down. And, I got a small pond on my place, and right now it's more like a puddle. So I could wade across it if I didn't want to sink up to past my knees. But, it's a lot of people got ponds like that right now.
Yeah, I was over at my friends own a piece of property near a piece that I lease, and it's a really great duck habitat. And they turned the pumps on, I want to say over 2 weeks ago. And because there's usually water in this bottom, usually it fills up pretty quickly. And I was looking at it yesterday, and it's starting to come on up. But man, that pump's been running nonstop now for over 2 weeks, and it's got a long way to go. I think that tells the story across the state. So when you go into a private lake, what's some of the advice you give private owners?
Well, first off, I ask them what they want from the lake. They're managing for just a balanced fish population. Do they like to catch big brim? Do they want just big bass? So we want to get their, management goals in mind to make our recommendations. Then I kind of floor, because I always ask them how much time and money they're willing to invest in it. Because, most folks just think that, fishing are free. And there's no, God just puts them out there and everything is good. But, it's like anything else, whether it's your lawn or your garden or, a crop field, you get out of it what you put into it. If you let the weeds grow and you never fertilize it, your garden's not going to do too good. So it's the same sort of thing. It's management. And most of the ponds, and I will say probably between 80 and 90% of the ponds we look at anymore are overcrowded with bass. And so, that's the larger the pond is and the fewer the folks fish it, the more challenging that is to try and turn around. Because, you're going to have to get your bass numbers in proportion to the number of brim in there so that they can, the bass can grow normally. Otherwise, they're chasing around little bitty, just hatched brim, and they don't get much out of them, so they don't gain much weight. Like we take bite out of stuff, but bass eat them whole. I tell people, if I took a handful of peanuts, threw it out over a football field, and challenged you to go find them, and maintain the same weight, that's basically what a bass is having to do. And I said, but if I threw out, a handful of ham sandwiches, of course you have to bite them, but you find one or two sandwiches and you'd be all right.
Yeah. That's actually a really, really good analogy. If you look back on the summer, the lakes that you guys have responsibility for, is how did those lakes perform, with the exception of that one?
They performed all right. We're getting a lot of fishing pressure. Pressure is, and you probably, I don't know if you noticed on that podcast you're talking about, pressure is a function of acreage. When your acreage goes down, we've measured fishing effort, which is total hours of people out there fishing, and pressure is hours per acre. So, we have our community assistance ponds. We've done some studies on those, and they may have 50 times or more the fishing pressure in terms of hours per acre. say Sardis Lake.
Yeah. Hey, so look, by the way, this podcast that Keith mentioned was a crappie podcast, and I learned some interesting facts about crappie that I did not know from that podcast. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the crappie specifically. Mississippi's had tremendous success with crappies, and so it's a really great success story for fisheries biologists at the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with fisheries biologist Keith Mills. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. As I was coming out of this segment, I thought about my buddy Cal Curley, who we can see during Super Talk Outdoors and through my other show, the Ricky Matthews Show. Cal Curley is the man. He's the producer of this show. And I always say about Kyle that you can set your clock to him, that he's always here. He's Johnny on the spot doing this show. He's a talented guy. He does, information services. He does operations. He does music in the Superdome during Saints games, you've heard me say before, but he is the man. Hey, Cal, thank you so much for what you do to support me, my friend.
You bet. Not a problem. My pleasure.
Yeah, he's a guy. And he loves to fish, I might add. He loves to fish. So let's get back over to our friend Keith Mills, who's been with the department over 37 years, the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. He's a fisheries biologist. And as I said in my conversation with Lake Pickle a minute ago, and I say just about every week, I love celebrating the people who work for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. The work that they're doing is so important for generations to come. I mean, what they're doing is leaving a legacy. And Keith, you've been doing this a long time, but you really appreciate and understand what it means to do the work that you do and what it means for our kids and our kids' kids and why that's important, don't you?
Oh, sure. We've tried to create a situation where we are maintaining a crappie population that people have come to expect in this area. We have done that through, I have been involved with that long enough that, when I started, we had a, 50 fish statewide limit on crappie. And, we were just getting started with the crappie-thon back in the late 1980s. And, just as time has evolved, crappie fishing has evolved. I never thought folks would be crappie fishing out of $80,000 boats with thousands of dollars of accessories, coming hundreds or thousands of miles to come fish for crappie. It used to be pretty much a John boat and a sculling paddle kind of thing, and it has really become very mainstream, just like bass tournaments and all that kind of thing.
People want to catch the slab, man. I mean, come on. You guys have done a good job of creating those, haven't you?
Well, we have. So far.
That's not so far.
It's kind of a arms race. The fishing technology gets better, and we have to try and match that with our regulations to try and maintain that level of fishing success, and it is challenging.
Hey, it was good to learn that before we started the show that you had actually spent some time down at Gulf Shores when you were in school, and you had been involved in speckled trout tagging programs. And of course, we've had speckled trout tagging programs here for many years. Was involved in the cobia tagging program. Dr. Jim Franks, who, in fact, I need to get him on the show. What he's learned about cobia through his tagging program is incredibly important to that particular fisheries. I was so interested to learn that on the research that you guys have done around crappie. When I think of a crappie, I think of one that's going to be in a school and kind of hang out in a really similar area. But your tagging program has shown that a crappie will swim as far as 10 miles. I can think of a cobia doing that out in the open ocean, but as you pointed out during the break, you were, it's an open lake and they're going to follow the fish. But 10 miles, that was a big surprise to me.
Well, my roommate when I was at Auburn, we were involved in a pond management company for a while before I came here to Mississippi. And he had one of our clients ask when we stocked some fish in the lake, from their dock, Says, well, are they going to find their way around the lake? And he just looked at him and says, well, a fish doesn't have anything to do all day but swim.
Yeah, right.
And so, when you think about it, they're looking for the appropriate habitat. They're looking for food. They're looking for, a place to, settle down. But some fish don't settle. Bass, there's some bass that tend to stay in one place, and so there's some bass that scoop. And with crappie, generally your white crappie are more the open water schoolers than the black crappie are. They tend to be more associated with vegetation and cover, whereas white crappie tend to be more open water, what we call pelagic. And so they're out there following the bait fish schools. And when we're doing creel surveys and we pull up on the boat, we can almost tell what they're going to have in the live well based on where and how they're fishing. Because if they're, say, trolling open water, they're primarily going to have white crappie. But if they're anchored down over, say, some brush tops, they're going to almost invariably have black crappie in the live well.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's so interesting. Listen, we're out of time for today, Keith, but it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you.
Oh, no problem at all. Thank you.
Have a great Thanksgiving. We'll see you next Monday. And as I said at the beginning of the show, stay safe when you're in the outdoors. God bless you, and have a great day.